Best Cast
Network.
Now things will start kicking ass, just like it said at the beginning of the program.
Man of the hour, tower of power, too sweet to be sour.
Sending your ass on the jabroni jet to the other side of the territory, brother.
The Alabama Hammer.
Nightmares on the best part of my day. The goods from the wood.
Hot damn.
All right, welcome to the Goods from the Woods. My name is Rivers Langley.
Pat Riley.
The reflection of perfection, the number one selection, Mr. Goodnight, man of the hour, tower of power, too sweet to be sour.
And joining us today, our very special guest in the studio,
Jim Bruce.
Jim Bruce.
Hey, everybody.
That's right, from Tucson, Arizona, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. It's been so long since I was in Tucson that I lived in Montana, and I'd rather identify as being from Montana, and not as a knock on Arizona, but more just when I think about Montana, it seems like it's a more interesting place.
It's very magical. Everybody that I know that has been to Montana speaks very highly.
I will tell you the weirdest thing that ever happened in Montana. My father's name was Herman, not a common name anymore. A name in retirement, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And by the time I was a kid, the last Herman anybody knew was Munster. I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
Nobody knew any, regular guy Herman. So when I was a kid and we were walking through a graveyard, I came across the grave of Herman Bruce. Mm-hmm. And it freaked me out because number one, I'd never known anybody named Herman. And also, as a kid, your id is so prominent in your thinking that it's hard for you to imagine things beyond your own life. So I couldn't imagine... it couldn't occur to me that was my father's father.
Yeah.
But so, of course, what I thought was, my dad died and they buried him real fast. So I was real freaked out by the whole thing. It was kind of awesome in a way.
And speaking of time travel, or time travel on some sort of loose sense, the topic for today
is the Scott Bakula classic television show, Quantum Leap.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Quantum Leap, beginning of every episode.
I really, it's Al. Why haven't I leaped?
No, the beginning of every episode is he looks in the mirror, he realizes who he is, and he goes, oh, boy. And then we cut to credits.
Oh, yeah.
Every single time. I love that. It's an interesting show, too, as far as where it hits, as far as the way shows were done. Because shows in the old days, you take a drama show, any drama show, and that's considered a drama. It's sci-fi, but it's a drama. And all the characters are kind of set. You go, this is how this character is, and this is how this character is. And for the most part, episode to episode, whatever conflicts they have, there's not much change because the networks, their model always was, we want people to be able to watch anytime, to jump in anytime, and never do we want to worry that, oh no, you haven't seen the first whatevers. And so there's always that sort of limitation in early TV, and Quantum Leap was right at the cusp of that changing. So it has sort of a progressive storyline, but there's always the reset.
But it was almost like an anthology show.
And it was tailor-made for syndication, like that model that you were talking about. It's like you can put it into reruns, you can put it into syndication, where they make all the money on it, and people can watch it, and they don't have to watch a sequential sort of set of seasons. You can watch, it's like, I think the last show that was really like that was like Law and Order, like it's a Law and Order sort of thing.
The only thing is, like, if you were to see the episode where he leaps in to try to save his brother, you need to see that one kind of in a particular time, or you leap into the one where he sees Al's first wife, who breaks his heart, just breaks his heart. You kind of need to see that one, and then the last one, you should probably see that last. You should probably see that one last, because none of the others are particularly useful after the last one. Mm-hmm. A lot of people hated that finale. Oh my God, did they hate that finale. The finale was grim, and I loved the fact that it was kind of grim. Everybody wasn't happy at the end. It was pretty great.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I've actually never seen the show. I think I'm the only person here.
Play through it, brother. Play
Well, I
through
think
it.
a lot of the
I don't know
people-
what everybody's talking about most of the time, every day.
Oh yeah, no. I would like some explanation because I feel like I'm the.
And I think probably a lot of listeners have never seen
Yeah.
Quantum.
All right, so
Take it, Jim. Take it
I'm
away,
gonna,
Jim.
I'm going to explain time travel the way Dr. Samuel Beckett explained it to Al. Imagine your life as a string. So your life is a string, and you hold the string in your hands and you stretch it out. And let's say on the left, in your left hand, that's the beginning of your life, and in your right hand, that's the end of your life. And within the string are all the moments in between. Now imagine you were to ball the string up, and all of the moments would touch each other. Every moment would touch each other. And it's one of those things where the show kind of does play off real physics and then adds nonsense into it. But so you imagine you ball it up and all the parts of it touch. And that's how the quantum leap theory, which is that a man could jump to any point within his own timeline. That was the limitation. He couldn't leap to a date before he was born, and he couldn't leap to a date after he died. He could only travel within his own lifetime.
So that would write out the obvious storyline arc of going back in time to write Hitler's path or something.
Absolutely,
like that.
yeah.
That's a smart move.
I think the one thing we got to point out though is that he would actually leap into other people's bodies.
That's right. So
and that
what would
the
happen
premise of the
was
show.
he would. Now, he did not know that he was going to be leaping into other people's bodies when he started. From the very beginning, the show is both sort of scientifically based and philosophically based, and even maybe a little bit religious, because what happens is he gets into the quantum leap accelerator, he turns blue the first time, and he leaps, and he disappears, and immediately there's somebody else in the room, in the waiting chamber where he normally would be, and they don't know why that person is there. And what they quickly figure out is that he leaps and he changes places with that person.
Okay.
So that's an odd thing. They're like, well, why did that happen? And when he leaps into that person, everybody within the world sees him as the other person. They don't see him as Sam Beckett. Like, so he can be a little kid, he can be a woman, he can leap in, and he has to figure out why he's there. And the very first time he leaps, they go, there's some other energy here that just took over. We don't know what it is. And they never say it's God, but Sam thinks it's God. And so then when they're all done, Sam leaps out of the body, that guy disappears, and they're like, okay, cool, fine, Sam will be back. Sam doesn't come back. Instead, another person appears, and they realize, oh, he's never coming back to this room. For some reason, they can't ever get him to leap into the room.
Okay.
He only leaps from time to time. He never comes back to his own time.
I believe that, like in a good TV show too, every time he leapt into a particular person, he solved a problem in their life.
Exactly. Well, that was the whole point. Is he wouldn't leap out unless he solved the problem.
Then he would instantly leap out and he'd be in another person, and it was like the setup for the next episode.
Exactly, that's right. One of my favorite arcs was he leapt into an old man who was helping out this little girl. And he helped out the little girl. And they only did this one time in the show. He leapt into the old man who helped out the little girl. And so he helped her out, and then he leapt. And then he leapt into this young man who was in love with this young woman. And a little while later, he was like, ah, crap, this is that little girl. Why am I, what? So he helps her out, and he falls in love for real. Like Sam Beckett falls in love with her because he's there for a while. He leaps out, and he becomes a young ward helping out this old woman, and it's her. And they only did that once, and I kind of appreciate that they only did that once.
Because that's pretty heavy duty.
It was severe. And they also implied that it kind of jerked up his feelings for his real wife, who he would forget about. That was the other thing, is they talked about there was this effect that time travel had on him, which he said it Swiss cheesed his brain, his memory.
Right, I remember
because
that.
there would be giant holes in his memory. And then they speculated that it was necessary, that it may be that he's forgetting things that would get in the way of him being able to do what he needs to do. So he would always forget that he was married because sometimes he needed to be romantically involved. And that was their way.
I like it. Time travel is a great way to lose your inhibitions.
Yeah. And it really is funny because that's their way of getting around. Oh, he's not cheating. Because he don't know.
He don't remember. his brain, you put some pastrami on that, you make a sandwich.
Yeah, you make a sweet Swiss cheese sandwich.
I can go for that. The other thing, too, I think we should bring up is the Dean Stockwell character.
Dean Stockwell's great.
Wow.
Play it again, Sam.
Am I Bogey?
No, he's on Long Island with Audrey Hepburn making Sabrina. But the resemblance is amazing. That might be why Nick became a gumshoe.
Gumshoe?
Seamus, Tech, Dick. You don't know the lingo.
Yeah. And Ziggy's he had the big phony-looking cigar.
Yeah,
that thing looked like an old remote control. I was like, Al, Ziggy says.
Al's great. There's a couple things I love about Al. Al's a womanizer, and Al's an archetype for sure. He's the funny sidekick. He's got a outrageous cigar, He was a crazy womanizer. He was in Vietnam. He had been in a POW camp for a long time, so he was a guy who'd lived. He definitely had been through some shit.
Crazy womanizer went to Vietnam, found out the hard way nobody gives a damn.
And we found out later, and I'm going to give you the heartbreaking surprise towards the end of the podcast, but I'm going to tell you this part. Now, we found out later he did have a wife that he was dedicated to, but when he was in a POW camp, she thought he was dead, and she fell in love and got remarried. Ooh. So he could never love again because that was his true love. Wow. So but they did an episode with Al where Sam leapt into a gay member, a gay guy in the Navy.
That's progressive.
Was it a village person?
Yes, that's right.
I would have leapt into the Leatherman.
Right.
I would have leapt into the cowboy.
So, all right, Rivers, which one would you have leapt into?
Of the village people?
Yeah.
Oh, the cop.
Oh, there we go. We got them all covered. We should just do that. We should just go as the village people sometime.
Yeah.
Say we left.
Yeah.
The cop's the lead singer,
You notice
right?
nobody wants a construction worker.
actually go
He was
for the-
also the admiral, I think, sometimes when they did it in the Navy.
I like the construction worker of that is funny too because you think to yourself, well, I could be a fucking construction worker.
Yeah.
Why do I want to dress up like you got a guy as an Indian chief? Well, you can't be an Indian. You can't. A biker, that's kind of exotic. Leaping into construction worker is like, hey, I'm the fry cook.
Yeah.
Hey, I leapt into the fry cook, guys.
Well, I'm the Tom of Finland fracker.
Yeah, at least these the blue collar end of the village people.
Just a giant,
Just
working
serving up
man.
a sausage.
giant Pringles can.
Which is against the health code.
Yeah.
Although I won't say this about Al. Now, Al was part of like the scientific research team that Scott Bakula was with, and he would like appear as a hologram back in time.
He had no scientific background. He was the liaison between the military who funded this project.
Why can't the military fund cool shit like this?
I know.
Maybe they do. We just don't know
part
about
of the
it.
stimulus package.
Yeah.
But here they did this episode where Sam leaps into a gay guy who is in the military, and it was during Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Right.
And this guy gets drummed out of the military, and that's part of what the show is about. And Al thinks he should have been drummed out of the military because, hey, he's gay. He shouldn't. And Al's very much a traditional military guy. And Sam's like, but he's serving his country. Why does it matter who he loves? And it really was fairly progressive at the time to even be addressing this. Side note, Dean Stockwell probably was the guy who thought of the storyline. Because rock solid gay dude who was with Roddy McDowall.
Roddy McDowall's gay?
Yeah, and Roddy McDowall and Dean Stockwell were partners.
I never knew. Cornelius. Do you think they ever did some kind of kinky thing? We wore the ape suit, beware the beast man.
Out of the question.
Cornelius, why do you insist on provoking him?
But the Al also was but he was only visible to like kids. And
sometimes kids could see him,
like Santa Claus,
and kids with like autistics.
Yeah.
It would be like the people you think, the people who traditionally nut jobs think can see ghosts.
Yeah,
right. So people who could in that show, that was the truth in that show. The truth.
Autistic children often see Dean Stockwell.
Right. And they actually did a great episode where Al leapt. There was some, which of course they're bound to do at least one of those, and and then they do the one episode where Sam finally manages to leap home, but then he has to make the big sacrifice and do it again and hope that they can get him again.
Right.
And then of course they can't. But yeah, that was a great. Dean Stockwell's character was kind of cool in that he starts out as the most generic archetype for a TV show. He's the sidekick. He's the womanizer. He thinks he's all that with women, but just like all TV characters, he ain't.
Yeah.
Or he is when it's serviceable to the story or whatever. But then as the show progressed, his character became more complex.
Yeah.
And once they introduced the reason for his womanizing, which they revealed in the episode where Dr. Ruth leapt in.
Close the door, read some very sexy fantasies, put some sexy music on, and bring yourself to sexual satisfaction.
Sam...
That's a definite timepiece.
Yeah. Sam, now here was the great thing they did there. Sam leapt into Dr. Ruth. So he's like, why am I leaping into Dr. Ruth?
Now he'd be like, who the hell am I?
Yeah, exactly. So now he's on her radio show dispensing sex advice, and they can't figure out why he's leapt in. There's like, her life seems to be fine. It turns out he didn't leap into Dr. Ruth to help her. He leapt into Dr. Ruth so Dr. Ruth would be in the waiting room with Al.
Oh.
So she could help him.
Wow.
Evan, but I think a lot of people have leapt into Dr. Ruth
him
over the years.
with his sexual relationship?
Yes.
Or okay,
Because at that time he
emergency room?
Al had a girlfriend.
Like some sort of autoerotic asphyxiation.
Well, actually, that brings up another interesting question. When he leap into people, they'd appear in the waiting room.
Right.
So there's been some famous people in that waiting room, because I remember the episode we leapt into Elvis Presley.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what they did do really well in that episode which is actually sort of touching, which is they gave good advice. Because he leaped, so
Maybe
Dr. Ruth is there, I bet. Dr. Ruth was there, and Al was there, and Al was having trouble because he wasn't sure if he wanted to get serious about his girlfriend, because he finally had a semi-serious girlfriend, and he could never say he loved his girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, because I loved my wife. I loved her so much, and she brought him to the point of understanding that you can love somebody else, but it doesn't mean you didn't love that other person. And it was actually done fairly complex for a TV show.
Yeah.
It was like kind of impressive in a way.
They covered a lot of good stuff on that
Yeah.
show. Covered a variety of
They
issues.
asked moral questions, and they were definitely very conservative in certain ways, but also fairly strangely progressive, considering that Belisario is
I was about to say.
a hardcore conservative. But he reminds me of Roddenberry in that he's a military guy who created a TV show, and an outlandish TV show to boot. And yet the parts that are structurally about hierarchy are the most sound parts of the show. Because, I don't know if you remember the original Twilight Zone, how the military never made sense.
Right.
Anytime the military was portrayed in the Twilight Zone, there were people who were immediately hotheads who did things that would get them executed in a real military. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like whenever there was astronauts on the Twilight Zone, immediately one of the guys would go, I don't have to listen to you, Commander. Oh, wait a minute, haven't you been in the military for 30 years?
Yeah.
It took you 4 seconds to go, I shun this whole thing that I've been doing my entire life, and was broken down by a system and rebuilt so that I wouldn't do what I'm doing now. Because, of course, the guys who were for the Twilight Zone were all crazy dudes. None of those guys were military guys. Their idea of the military was, those are the guys who wear hats, right?
Yeah.
They wear
That
hats.
was also the era where everybody, most adults had been drafted at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So people watching it, most of the audience on all the TV shows back then would have had military experience.
Yeah, but not the guys who wrote for the Twilight Zone. Whereas, on Quantum Leap, they had it. They knew what the hell was going on with the military and stuff. It was a great show in that regard. It was the like I said, it's always the reset, and then right around season 2, when the evil leaper shows up. Oh, there's an evil leaper.
Uh-oh.
There's a bad leaper. And and the evil leaper, they don't know where she's coming from.
It's a she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he can see who she really is when he touches her. Like, basically, he would accidentally touch her shoulder, and her body would morph from, say, the little girl she was occupying, and you'd see who she really was, and she'd see who he was. And he at first didn't know she was evil, and there was a female character who was the counterpart to Al, but that was where they firmly established, oh, well, clearly God is leaping Sam, because they make clear the devil is leaping this woman to undo some of the fixes Sam has done.
They get a little bit away from science at that point.
Oh, they way do, yeah. They way mix, yeah.
Let's be serious, Satan is real.
Satan is real.
Working in spirit. You can see him and hear him in this world every day.
That's right.
I think it's interesting that they made the evil leaper a woman, because my fiance mentioned that like she really hates the Smurfs. Like she hates the Smurfs.
Like Gargamel.
Yeah, because she finds it ridiculous that the one female Smurf was created by Gargamel to like breed discontent within the Smurf like commune.
Yeah.
So that like the one woman in there is the unknowing embodiment of evil.
Well, to be
very
fair,
much like essentially the evil leaper is, even though she's not as.
I think that says a lot though about Gargamel's psyche, because you never really saw Gargamel with a woman. He was almost like an old lady, just up in some tower with a cat, reading books about magic and things like it. It was a lonely life being Gargamel.
He's like Milton's Satan.
Yeah.
Well, I will say
exactly.
to her credit,
and he stole the
Smurfette.
show, just like Milton's Satan.
Exactly.
To her credit, Smurfette upended that by not being evil, I guess. Mm-hmm. And likewise, the evil leaping girl does something noble, and the next time she leaps in a different way, and the implication is maybe she's been redeemed, so we don't know.
Redemption through leaping.
Yeah. Which, in that sense, the show is all over the map philosophically, because you think, well, it's got the devil, so it's got some sort of a Judeo-Christian thing, but if that's the case, this evil leaper girl, she's already in hell, so she can't be redeemed, right? Because you can't redeem a demon.
But it's
she
also
could.
like
Maybe she's the person
it's also
who
kind
died.
of Buddhist in a way, where she's like been redeemed, so she gets recreated into some
Yeah,
higher
absolutely. But that's what I mean.
being.
It's a nice mix. And you're right. They established later that there apparently are leapers who are leaping after their death. That's what they do. And then Sam says, Al, maybe all the times you hear people who supposedly saw ghosts, maybe those are just leapers trying to change things.
This explained a lot of things. Reincarnation, ghosts.
Yeah.
Rivers, you missed out on this.
I was going to say,
I
yeah.
know you got to get the reruns. Get you a videotape.
So
or
now,
they have it now. The Netflix.
So now I'll tell you
Netflix.
another episode. I'll tell you another episode before we get to the. I'm going to give you. So then there's an episode, right? So Al's a womanizer. He was in love with this woman who abandoned him when she thought he was dead in Vietnam. Sam leaps into this body. He doesn't know what he's there to do, and Al continually insists he's there to stop this woman from dating this man. But that's not why he's there. Al is doing that because that happens to be his wife. And he's leapt into a person who lives near his wife. And Al almost ruins this mission. It's a great episode because he's not actually there to do that. That's not why he's there. But there's his wife who's going to leave him, and he still loves her. He's seeing her, and he's like, oh, my God. And so Sam says, I can't do that. That's not why I'm here. You know I'm not here to do that. And there's this last scene where Al is talking to her. She can't see him, obviously, saying, I'm out there. Don't give up on me. It makes no difference. She can't. And that's the tragedy of it.
She's not an animal or a child.
So we'll come back to this sad moment where it's too bad Sam can't do anything for Al. It's too bad. So we'll come back to that. What other parts of the show do you remember?
Well, actually, I wanted to say something about Dean Stockwell for a moment. No, seriously. Dean Stockwell, I always thought that show was really good for him because it gave him that recognizable character.
Absolutely.
Because he had been in Hollywood forever. You watch, he shows up in, old episodes of Columbo and things like this. Dune, a million different things. And after that point, though, he got that one trademark character. So now you can't see him in anything else without thinking, look, it's Al from Quantum Leap.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Donald Belisario did that with with Ernest Borgnine. I mean, Ernest Borgnine obviously had like trademark characters, but like he put him in Airwolf as Dominic, and that was like.
Well, he'd been on McHale's Navy.
Yeah, that's
he'd won
true.
an Oscar for Marty.
Yeah,
and one of my favorite movies of all time, The Wild Bunch. Just want to point that one out.
Great film, yeah.
Crazy violent.
But it moves kill him.
Great.
Washers, we shot our way out of that town for $1 worth of steel holes.
They set it up.
Caught you, didn't they, eh? Tied a tin can to your tail, led you in and waltzed you out again. Oh, my, what a bunch. Big tough one, eh? Here you are with a handful of holes, a thumb up your ass, and a big grin to pass the time of day with.
I think my dad said once that he's watched The Wild Bunch 35 times.
Your dad is a great man.
Because when he was on a submarine and they only had a limited amount of movies.
Yeah.
So they would do this thing where to pass the time, they would watch movies over and over and over again. Like they once had a competition of who could watch Bikini Beach Bingo with Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon the most times in a row, and the last one to survive would get like a bottle of rum or something like that.
Oh my God!
Just get through it all. Just wait for the Buddy Hackett scenes.
Wow, man, those are bad movies. Those are bad, even in context.
I would not want to be watching that in a submarine because I got to admit that would look pretty damn good. And
no, I might just try to open a fucking window at that point.
That's a good sidebar question. What's the movie you've watched the most times?
The movie that I've watched the most times, I would have to say, oddly enough, Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day.
Apropos.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What you got, Pat?
The movie that I've watched the most times is Bloodsport.
You are not Japanese. I can do it. Now, for the first time, the true story of America's super agent, Frank Dukes, can be revealed.
Uncle Sam can't afford to let you get hurt.
I'm going to Hong Kong.
Frank is going to fight in the Kumite, and we're here to stop him.
Jean-Claude Van Damme in Bloodsport. The true story of the ultimate champion.
I've watched Bloodsport about 3 times on the Spanish network.
Dig this.
Like, I've seen that movie.
Frank Duke was at Liquid Zoo, like, not that long ago. Like, the actual guy Bloodsport's based out of
Dukes,
was
like,
just
put up your Dukes.
hanging out at Liquid Zoo watching open mic comedy.
Ah, that's awesome.
It was so weird. And I wouldn't have known except that Ron Swallow, the guy who hosted, he was like, that's Frank Dukes. Whoa.
A couple of friends of mine actually made a Bloodsport, made basically a short film it's almost exactly Bloodsport, but the game is rock, paper, scissors. and it's very funny, and it's and there's this.
So they would assume they would actually assume the characters, like one guy would have to be the monkey guy and one guy would have to be like.
And the violence, there's a surprising amount of blood in the movie we made for a rock, paper, scissors, because the implication was that it's in a universe where it causes physical damage. It's a pretty funny little thing. It's called Honor of the Hand. It's called Honor of the Hand.
What about you?
I actually do that all the time, what they do on a submarine. So there's many, many movies that I've seen hundreds of times because I just like it. But Omega Man would probably have to be the record.
Charlton Heston?
Oh, yeah. I love my favorite. There was a point where I could recite the entire movie for the most part. And the best part is, if you remember in the Omega Man, there's nobody else left in the world, so there's one, but he just goes to this movie theater and watches the only movie that's there over and over again, which is Woodstock.
Yeah.
And there's a part where he's sitting in the theater and there's this hippie guy babbling about like what a great time he's having, and Charlton Heston is saying all the dialogue along with him because he's seen the movie so many times. And I could actually do it where it was like infinite regression, where I could recite Charlton Heston reciting Woodstock along with Charlton Heston reciting Woodstock in the movie.
What's your movie?
It's got to be Jurassic Park.
Really?
Yeah. That was my favorite movie when I was a kid. I remember getting it on VHS and going through 2 VHS copies of it because I watched it that many times.
That's awesome.
On your butts.
That's awesome. You know what is a current movie that I've watched a lot more than you would think a person would is the Captain America.
Oh, yeah.
That movie resonated with me.
I like that one.
Yeah, well, my father was a WW2 guy. And
Yeah.
just anytime I see WW2 represented well, like, of course, in
Private Ryan?
Yeah, Private Ryan killed me. The first scene, there's a great scene in Private Ryan, the first scene.
Yeah.
15 minutes of brutal violence, and there's a guy on the beach, and he's an extra. And he's running, and a bullet hits his leg, and his leg is gone. And I fucking lost it, because that's pretty much what happened to my dad. Pretty much that leg. So that guy on the beach, if you didn't know, was named Herman.
Oh, boy. You watched that scene.
My great uncle lost both of his legs in WW2. His was gangrene.
Ooh.
And he
So they were injured, and then they had to, yeah.
But he was like this ridiculous guy. Like he would he wouldn't wear his he had prosthetics, but he wouldn't wear them. He would get drunk out in Philly and like lose his prosthetic legs, like in different parts of Philly. So like the left one would be over on this side of Philly, and the other side would be in Jersey. It would be like it would kind of go against all sorts of logic. One time he because my family is has a lot of nuns and priests. And he was at this bar, and this guy was like talking. He was talking a lot of trash about the clergy, which was a big no-no with Uncle Tom, because you're talking about family. And he's seated at a bar, and you can't see his legs, so he's just seated on a bar stool. And this guy is just like, "Yeah, well, you're protecting them because you like to touch children too." And Tom gets pissed off. He gets up on his arms and launches himself, and in midair nails this guy right in the chin and knocks him out, and proceeds to just beat the shit out of him.
Like Ray Den from Mortal Kombat.
And then he gets arrested, and they have the arraignment for him, and that's the point in which the guy, the judge, and a lot of people in the courtroom find out that my great uncle Tom doesn't have any legs. So this guy didn't know, nor did the judge. And the judge berated the guy for getting his ass kicked by a guy with no legs. You know? and then when they dismissed the case, my uncle Tom leapt out of his wheelchair. He never went in a wheelchair, but he went in a wheelchair for to put on a show.
Yeah.
And he kind of drooled a bit and stuff. He leapt out of the chair and kind of did the whole like gorilla walk on his legs out of the courtroom. And probably went and got drunk too. So
That is awesome. Yeah, my dad, what he would do is, my dad was an amazing swimmer, and it was the one athletic thing left for him, really, because he couldn't do a lot, and he used to be kind of an outdoorsman.
Yeah.
So what he would do is he would leave his leg on the side of the water, and then he would fucking go like just amazing, just cut through the water, and that was always amazing. And it always seemed like, oh, I guess it's better to just have one leg at this point, because it was basically the way he used it was he's like a merman. It was a fin.
Yeah, it would just be a rudder that would just
he
keep
would just
him
cut through the
solid
water.
as
It was fantastic.
Like an alligator tail.
Yeah.
When the Führer says, "Wie ist der Master Race?" Wie Heil, Heil, right in the Führer's face. Not to love the Führer is a great disgrace. So be Heil, Heil, right in the Führer's face.
So I don't want to miss this. I'm not saying we should end, but I wanted now. Let's go to the sad conclusion of the Al story.
Let's do it. Let's leap into that right
we have
now.
plenty of Quantum Leap that we can talk about.
Yeah.
And Rivers needs to. Yeah.
So now what we've seen is that Al's a womanizer. Now we find out why Al's a womanizer. Final episode. Sam leaps into this bar called Al's Place, and it's not Al. It's a different guy, just a coincidence.
Not the one from Happy Days.
No, and Sam walks in, and he looks in the mirror. It's a very nice, calm. It's one of the calmest leaps he's ever done. He's hanging out.
Yeah.
He walks into the bar. He orders a beer. On tap, it's a nickel, of course, because it's always like some very charming, cheap amount of money.
Yeah.
He looks in the mirror to finally see the face that he's going to see, and it's his own.
Oh, boy.
And it's a true oh boy moment, because that's never happened in the series before. He looks in, and then we see Al. He's like, there's nobody in the imaging chamber. Sam should be here. There's always somebody in the imaging chamber. And he looks at a newspaper. It's his birthday. But his birthday, this is the day he was born. That's the minute he leapt, and he literally leapt into the moment he was born at this bar where there's this guy named Al. So their little adventure happens. Al doesn't know where Sam is. He's trying to figure out where he is. But Sam's in this weird bar where he keeps seeing people from previous episodes.
Okay.
And there are people we all recognize, like there was a little autistic kid, but in this one he doesn't have autism, but it's clearly the same kid, but with a different name. And there's a guy there named Ziggy. And there's a guy there named Al and all this stuff. So
was Lee Harvey Oswald there?
No, that would have been great. Yeah. So it's like that painting. It's it's got Elvis is there, Marilyn Monroe,
Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
It's a veritable Sgt. Pepper's.
That's right. So he doesn't know why he's there. He solves a little problem. He helps solve a problem, and that's good. And he finally figures out that this bartender is the spirit, God, the whatever he is, he's the guy who's been leaping Sam. And they have this conversation, and Al, meanwhile, is trying to figure out how to get him out. And he has this conversation. He goes, "You've done a lot of good, Sam." And he goes, "What do you want? Imagine this is your vacation." He said, "I want to go home. I want to go home." He keeps saying that.
Sounds like a kid.
But he doesn't leap. He doesn't leap. And they say, "I want to go home." And he says, "You've done a lot of good, and you can do even more." He goes, "The leaps are going to get harder." And the implication is that the next set of leaps is going to be brutal. And he says, and he goes, "Yes," but he goes, "You have to accept that this was your choice. You're like a priest." And he goes, "But even a priest can quit." He goes, "That's true. Priests can also take a sabbatical. So if you were taking a vacation, what would you do?" "I want to go home." And in the end, he says, "But I can't." And he figures out what he needs to do. He goes, "Because I need to help Al." It actually almost is going to make me cry now, just thinking about it.
It sounds almost Christ-like. When it goes into the desert, "Can you take this cup from me?"
It is. And he says, "I'd like to go home, but I can't. I've got to go help Al." You knew that, didn't you? And the godlike character kind of shrugs his shoulder because he's just basically leading Sam to his own realization of his purpose. And so he leaps as himself back to the house, and they got the same actress, they got the same set, and he leaps to talk to Al's wife. And he says, "Oh, God, I will cry. I will be the first one to cry, and I will." Because it did make me cry. So he leaps in, and I'm telling you, my dad was a veteran. This part of the show always got me.
Yeah.
He leaps in, and he sees her, and she's freaked out, and she goes, "Don't worry, I'm here to help you, and I'm here to help Al." And she says, "You're a friend of Al's?" And he goes, "Yes. Can we sit down?" And we sit down. He goes, "I'm going to tell you a story, and it's got a happy ending, but only if you believe me." And she says, "And if I don't believe you?" And he says, "You will. I promise you will. But instead of the beginning, let's skip to the happy ending. Al's alive, and he will come home. You have to know that." She starts, oh my God. She starts crying. And she's just tearing up, and Georgia plays, which was Al and his ex-wife's cut to black, a little coda that says she never got married. Her and Al are happily married. They have 4 daughters. Dr. Sam Beckett never left home. Never!
Yeah.
And that's what made people so mad.
Yeah.
Never! The implication, he's like, well, a lot of people are going to be happy. Not you, buddy. Not you. And I loved that ending.
That's it. No, that's a fantastic ending.
I mean, it's a retroactive spoiler alert.
It's like the end of the.
By the way, watch it, and what I said doesn't spoil it because it's so emotionally resonant. Like, you know what I mean?
No, that's true. And to be honest with you, the way the show is such a different thing every time that even if you know how the whole thing concludes, you're still going to enjoy all the episodes.
But like that ending to me was like, it was perfect because they started out. Oh, and at the very beginning, Al and Sam don't really know each other very well because he's the liaison from the military.
Yeah.
He's really only there because Dr. Sam Beckett, the military doesn't necessarily trust him because he's a scientist, which is actually pretty accurate. And as the show progresses, they become friends. Mm-hmm. And then in the end, and the last scene, he's like, Al's my friend. He's done so much for me. And he'd made various sacrifices, including, oh my God, one of the best sacrifices. His brother died in Vietnam too. Sam's brother died in Vietnam, older brother, right?
Yeah, I remember this one.
Al was able to help save him by said, "Sam, do this thing." But as a result, they show there's a picture that somebody snaps. It's a photo of some POWs being led away.
Yeah.
the POWs are being led away, and one of the POWs turns around, and you realize it's Al as a young man. And Al knew this the whole time, but because he changed history, Al spent 2 more years in the camp as a young man. And he said, you could have gone home. And he went, I was already home. And he points to his head. I was already home. Which, come on. That's fucking amazing.
That's powerful shit.
Yeah, please. And then, so they earned that ending, because you were like, you know how shows will say, we were such good friends, and you're like, did they ever really show that? Did they ever really build the characters to where I actually believe they were friends? That show earned it. That show said, yeah, look, point after point, these guys did what real friends do. They laughed about horse shit, and they sacrificed when it had to get done.
It was good shit. It really was.
Is this show available on Netflix? Because I do feel like I need to watch
it.
it.
Is.
I think it is. Yeah.
It's worth the popcorn.
It just became available on Netflix instant streaming, so you can watch it.
What season do you think is the best?
I'm fond of the final season.
Yeah,
but
same here. I like the later ones.
But the first and second season are probably the best as far as being rooted in his mission. The last season is great. I really enjoy it. But what people at the time said, and what some people I know who like the show say, is that when he leaps into like Elvis, and when he leaps into Marilyn Monroe, or no,
Lee Harvey Oswald.
I used to call those novelty leaps when I was watching the show, and it was never as good.
And that the problem was, I think, that those were designed to get ratings, and I don't think they actually worked anyway. The great thing about the Lee Harvey episode, by the way, which was 3 episodes.
Wasn't the JFK movie out at the time?
I was about to say, the funny thing about it was, so he leaps into Lee Harvey Oswald, and he's Lee Harvey Oswald trying to get into the military and being a young punk kid. But the leap's a little screwed up. Sam and Lee Harvey didn't exactly leap perfectly, so some of Lee Harvey Oswald is in Sam's head. So he's crazy, which is kind of great. and he almost stabs this guy in a bar, which is apparently what Lee Harvey Oswald had done in the original timeline. But Al manages to go, come on, you're not this, stop. So he manages to stop. Then it's him in a bathtub considering suicide, and Al goes, you have to cut your wrists, because that's what he did. And I don't know why you're going through his life, but you have to do that to leap. And then he leaps. He's in Russia trying to, sell out America for secrets and become a Russian, because he did that too.
Yeah.
And so there's that scene. And then finally he leaps into the day JFK is killed, and he's Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah.
And Al is trying to get through to him, but at that point, he's so much Lee Harvey Oswald, he's going to pull the trigger anyway.
So the lesson here is that Scott Bakula was the second gunman.
Yeah. So he's there, and he's going to kill the president, and at the last second, he finally hesitates, and he leaps, and Sam is so grateful because for a minute, he could have been the guy who pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
And he leaps into the Secret Service guy who saved Jackie O.
Kennedy, yeah.
And then he goes, why was I sent to do this? I didn't save anybody. And Al says, you did save somebody. In the original timeline, Jackie was killed too.
Oh.
Talk about your magic bullets.
So that's what supposedly she got shot next. But because he covered her, she lived. Which I thought, and me and my friend Paul would talk about this, that's nonsense. Because that's what they basically said was, fate or God decided that the important person in the story to save
is Jacqueline Onassis.
So you went to a party with Jacqueline Onassis. If you're so smart, why don't you wear glasses so you can see what you're doing to me?
Here's the coda to that particular set of nonsense episodes that are actually pretty good. The Lee Harvey Oswald ones are pretty good, but
3 episodes. 3 episodes.
It's a 3-episode arc.
Yeah,
it's about as long
because I've seen parts
JFK.
of that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the very end, because Al is the whole time interviewing. Oh, and Al, his role is he's a conspiracy nut. He's like, he knows that Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't the real killer. Like, he's one of those guys.
Yeah.
That's what they say is.
Well, it ended up coming true because now it's Scott Bakula.
Yeah. But so here's Belisario's real agenda exposed. So he says, I talked to Lee Harvey Oswald. It turns out he really was the killer. There's no conspiracy. So it was basically Belisario saying, that movie that everyone's watching, it's fucking stupid. I'm a military guy. I fucking hate that movie. That's what that was.
That movie was stupid, I had to say.
I like some of the performances. Kevin Costner, I think, really is an underrated actor now, especially because people in retrospect like to pretend he's a bad actor. He's not. He just doesn't belong in every part.
Maybe he shouldn't direct all the time either.
Yeah, although Dances with Wolves stands up.
I always consider that movie uniform porn. Because there's so many close-ups of that gorgeous wool uniform that he has, and I get off on things like that. You're gonna see.
Yeah. Here's a fun fact: you can, if you watch the pilot episode of Gilligan's Island, which was shot in December of 1963, in the first shot before the song starts, they pan around the harbor. All the flags are at half staff for Kennedy. Yeah,
that's the episode where they give you the skipper's real name too, and the professor, I believe,
and Gilligan's real name.
Gilligan's real name is not Gilligan?
He gives his first name, I should say.
Okay.
Which
like
is
Jim or something?
Willie.
Willie Gilligan.
Willie Gilligan.
They actually say that on the show?
First episode, one mention.
Wow.
Yep, that's it.
That's interesting that they would say that in the pilot and not wait till the end, like they did in MacGyver, where they wait till like the latest season, like one of the last seasons, and have some stupid arc where he like gets hit by like a pot and goes back in time to like ancient, like, the Middle Ages, and finds out that his name is Angus. You find out his name is Angus.
Oh, like what was that?
Angus
Kramer. You remember with Kramer?
Cosmo.
They had a contest or something for his name.
And what was his original name? What was Kramer's original name?
Oh, in the show?
Yeah, because it wasn't Cosmo.
Well, it's based on a real guy named Kenny Kramer, who's the guy who does...
But do you remember the name on the door? Do you remember this?
Kessler.
Kessler, that's right.
Yeah. In the first episode, his name was Kessler. Because Larry David, this guy Kenny Kramer, who's a nut, like just an insane person, was Larry David's neighbor when he lived in New York, and so he based the character of Kramer off of him, but he wanted to avoid calling him Kramer because he knew this guy would try to cash in on it, so he changed it to Kessler in the first episode. They felt like it didn't work, so they changed it back to Kramer, and that dude did indeed cash in on it, and now he does the Kramer reality tour.
Doing the circuit, brother.
Which then they went and based an episode on that, like
that's a great episode.
where Kramer's driving the bus. That might be my favorite episode.
One of the reasons I suggested Quantum Leap for a theme is that the first time I ever saw Jim Bruce was not doing comedy, but it was roughly 15 years prior. I was watching on MTV. There was a special called Al TV, where essentially Weird Al Yankovic was coming out with the album with Amish Paradise on it.
Was that album with Scissors?
Bad Hair Day. And they were doing this very long, like 3-hour special. And they'd play it all the fucking time. It was like they used to play the shit out of things like that and rock and jock. And
they used to do Al TV every 2 years. Anytime Al put out an album, they would do the Al TV special.
So they did an Al TV special.
This would have been 96.
And there was a part where Al was getting fan mail.
Hey, we're back. And I can tell by the old clock on the wall that once again it's time for Ask Al. This is the segment where anybody on the street can ask me whatever question happens to be burning a hole in their minds.
And one of the fan mails that I remember was a very leery, creepy-looking guy in a Quantum Leap T-shirt. And by God, that was Jim Bruce.
It was indeed.
Okay, let's go to our first question.
Al, I just wanted to say that you are cool. Your songs are cool. The way you dress is cool. Your car is cool. Your answering machine message is cool. You know the face you make when you wake up in the morning when your alarm clock goes off? It's cool. And all that stuff you do when I'm staring at you through my telescopic lens? Cool. I even got the same kind of loofah sponge you use when you take a shower because it's so darn cool. Hey, you're out of toothpaste. Cool.
All right. Well, I'm not exactly sure what the question was there, so maybe we should just move on.
I remember as a kid we used to kid about the Quantum Leap shirt guy.
Holy shit. That's fantastic.
Holy shit. Yeah, that's
How did y'all end up doing that? Did they just ask for like fan videos or something?
No, I was just an actor. I'll tell you how that happened. That's so funny.
Yeah,
because first of all, Al could not be nicer. He's a very, very sweet.
I heard he's absolutely just like
the
gem
first
of a human being.
The first like piece of music I bought was a cassette of Alapalooza with my own money. That was the first thing. So,
no, he's an absolute prince. He's a very nice guy. So I did this movie called Desperation Boulevard with Judy Tenuta and Michael Lerner. You remember Michael Lerner? Oscar-nominated Michael Lerner.
I remember Judy Tenuta.
Dropping names, brother.
But I did this film called Desperation Boulevard, and I got cast as her stalker.
Right.
And I was in that film, and Weird Al. Al was in that movie. And we had a couple scenes together, and also just sitting around craft services with him. He's a very nice man. And I was probably the only part of that movie that, and I'm not bragging because it's an okay movie. I was the only one, though, who got a pretty good write-up in Playboy. Nice. I actually did get a really good mention in Playboy, but it was the typical mention you get when you're me, which is the guy who played the stalker was actually... There's a credit sequence. You can figure out my name. Yeah. You can do that.
And it's not like a particularly tough name or like a long name to throw off the spacing of the article.
Yeah.
Like if your name was, David Rajajowski, like that could take up some space in the print. In the
so I did that film, and that was a lot of fun, and it was when I did more acting back then than I do now, but still, it was great. And Al called me at home, which was weird.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, I'm doing Al TV. Do you want to do a part in it? I would like you to do kind of sort of like what you did, the crazy stalker sort of guy." I was like, I'd love to. That sounds fun. And so I drove down, and they filmed my bit, and I hung out with Al for a day. And I watched it on MTV, and it was exciting. And I'm watching it, and I get a phone call while it's on, and it's Al, and he goes, "Are you watching?" Are you watching? Me and Judy are watching it. And Judy and him are very good friends. And they were on the couch watching. And he's like, "You're so funny." I was like, "Gosh, this is a very good day."
Did you choose to do the Quantum Leap T-shirt, or was this something that they just gave you? Because it's just like, oh, Quantum Leap, this guy,
I still have that shirt. I wore it probably 2 days ago.
Really?
Because it still fits. That shirt was given to me by a dear friend named Rindy, who I still love. She's a very good friend, and I would wear it everywhere. And I wore that and another shirt, and I had something else. And I said, "Well, what do you want to wear?" And Al was like, "The Quantum Leap shirt. You got to wear that. That's funny." And what's funny to me, too, is because it's Al, and he maybe doesn't think about copyrights and stuff, they probably shouldn't have had me wear the Quantum Leap shirt. Because I know they didn't get it cleared, but he didn't worry about it, and nothing happened, so it was fine.
Yeah.
And it is a perfect shirt because it's a nerd shirt if there ever was one. But I love that shirt. I got it for like my birthday.
Alapalooza was the first album you ever bought, Rivers?
First, yeah, I was like,
wow.
Did you buy it because of Al or because of
Jurassic Park?
Right, that's what you did. That's funny.
No, it was because I saw the video. I was like, "Oh, this is great," and I love Jurassic Park, and I already have the Jurassic Park soundtrack, and this had a similar Jurassic Park logo, and I got it, and then I listened to it, and the thing with Weird Al is like at the time, like the parodies, when you're a kid, the parodies are what the straight up parodies are great. And that's like the best thing. But as you get older, the style parodies are the things that
they're amazing.
Like.
Dare to be stupid.
Dare to be stupid.
The last Craigslist. Listen, his last album.
Oh, the Doors one.
It's
great.
The greatest thing about it. So he does this song called Craigslist, and he does a pretty good Jim Morrison. The best part, first of all, is who plays keyboards on the song? Can you guess?
Ray Manzarek.
Did they get Ray?
Yes,
Yeah.
they did before he died.
Wow.
And it's a comedy song with a pretty hefty solo in the middle, which is such a funny thing. And then I could talk Al to you because I was a fan way before I met him, and that was just, how great was that? But like all of his like original songs, there's a song called Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota.
Yes, great.
There's a song called Germs. Do you remember Germs?
I remember Germs. My favorite is Well, I heard that you're
leaving.
Gonna leave you
me
far behind.
so far
Because you
behind.
found a brand new lover. Yeah, that.
You've decided that I'm not your kind.
What is that song called?
So I pulled your name out of my Rolodex.
We're just gonna have to sing the whole thing till we get to the
And I
chorus.
tore all your pictures in two. I burned down the mall shop where we used to go. Just because it reminds me of you.
That's very early.
That's right.
That's very
You
early.
ain't gonna see me crying. I'm
very
glad
early Frank
you
Zappa.
found somebody new.
Cause I'd rather spend eternity eating shards of broken glass than spend one more minute with you.
The song I really love is 1 minute.
They have 3 more nights.
Yeah, there's a.
And that was about 1 minute.
Yeah, 1 more minute.
I think it's
perfect.
funny. I didn't know that he parodied stylistically the Doors, which I think is absolutely hilarious.
Oh,
because
yeah.
that's one band. Maybe Ray Manzarek probably had the best sense of humor of the group, but Jim Morrison definitely probably took himself so seriously that he couldn't just leap outside of it. So it makes it even funnier. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard An American Prayer, the album that was like hastily.
That thing was.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's so bad.
Awake, shake dreams from your hair, my pretty child, my sweet one.
Have you
Choose
heard
the
this?
day and choose the sign of your day and the day's divinity.
Yeah,
First thing you see.
It's recorded. It's recorded poetry that Jim Morrison did.
Poetry
and it's
being
all
a
like kind
generous
of quotes.
term, yeah.
But like they put like background music, like they just layered background music on it.
No,
And
it's the
like,
Doors. They got the band together to just play.
Really?
Yeah, but it wasn't like
just
the
sounds
90s
but it
or
sounds
something.
like
No, it sounds
horrible,
terrible,
like-
but it's actually them.
like it's like almost like
synthy,
like butt funk, like porno music.
Well,
Yeah,
it wasn't
almost.
like the Doors back then. It was they got the guys from the Doors together back in like the 90s or something. Wasn't
Yeah,
it?
no, that's what I mean. It was because you're talking about Other Voices, or is it
No,
An American
Prayer, where
oh,
it's
okay,
just like
yeah.
the one where it's like he's just going in some like ridiculous poem that really is like pretentious and sucks about
Yeah.
like snakes and the American condition or something like that, and you just hear in the background like
Yeah. Well,
You know, and it's
there's
just
the
like-
ghost, the one, the ghost song. The ghost song
Yes.
is where it goes.
That one
It has the
sucks.
lick where it goes. Oh, it sounds like the casino night level in Sonic the Hedgehog. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
What's the first album you ever bought, Jim?
The first album I ever bought, I wish that
single
this
or
was
whatever.
not true. I wish that this was not true, but the first album I ever bought was Chipmunk Punk.
Yes, the one with "Call Me" and all
Yep.
that stuff on it. Oh man,
Yeah. Yeah, the first, probably the first real
People
album
from back
I
to Sarah, and
bought.
if you're listening, you can see I can do a chipmunk without speeding it up.
Yeah.
The first real album I probably bought was Olivia Newton-John.
wow, the one with physical on it.
Physical, yeah.
Well, she was slamming back then.
She's still kind of great. I would still fuck the shit out of her. I just really
Let me
would.
hear her body talk. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
well, creak now, but still, I would fuck the shit out of her.
Well, you oil up them joints. There's a little bit of WD-40 in there. All the right place lubes it up well.
Good night. What was the first you bought?
Well, of course, it was Marty Robbins' Gunfighter Ballads and Trail
Wow.
Songs.
Old Dan and I with throats burned dry and souls that cry for water. Cool, clear water.
Marty Robbins is one of my favorite country singers because he has killed himself in more songs. Like the end of so many of his songs is just
my
him
God.
dying.
If I could only hear one song before I died, I was in front of a firing squad, I'd say just play El Paso.
El Paso, yeah,
one last
or
time.
Cottonwood Tree, or like I think there's like three or four.
Yeah,
Marty
but
Robbins
El
songs.
Paso is just one of the most perfect pieces of music. That Spanish guitar at the
Oh, it's
beginning and all
beautiful,
that, love that.
Out in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl. Nighttime would find me in Rose's cantina. Music would play and Felina would whirl.
So I can see every tree that I saw as a kid just listening to that
It's a
song.
really great story song. It is really a great story song, but it's so flawed, and that's beautiful because you're like, Well, then how are you telling me this story?
Yeah.
Because you're telling me the story. The singer is, and then
Poetic license.
One last kiss.
And Felina, goodbye. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Like,
and
the
it was
only way it
worth it
works.
to him. That's the thing. It
Yeah.
was worth it.
Yeah, it really
he gets
is
killed,
brilliant.
but it was because that's what love will do to you.
Here's the only way that makes sense is if he's composing the song right around the time when the first bullet hits, and he's like, "Let me catch you up to what happened." That's
It probably is because if you remember that verse is in the present tense. I see the white puff of smoke from the rifle. I feel the bullet go deep in my chest.
Oh, it switches tenses.
You know what I wish, by the way? I wish you
From
couldn't
our
remember the name of that song. I wish that you couldn't have remembered the name of the song. So you were like, "Oh, of course, my favorite song." And then we had to sing it like we did before.
Oh,
Out in
I'll
West
sing the whole
Texas.
thing. Yeah. It's El Paso. You found the only thing that Mr. Goodnight can remember the name of. Nighttime would find me at Rose's Cantina. Music would play and Felina would whirl. Darker than night with the eyes of this maiden my ass. Let me just tell you that much.
Yeah.
Wicked and evil while casting a spell.
Cradled by two loving arms that I'll die for. One little kiss and Felina, goodbye.
To go back to Quantum Leap, I do love the episode where Sam becomes a monkey.
That's a great
Was it
episode.
David Jones? Or
No, like an actual
He
chimpanzee.
becomes a
Oh, I remember
chimpanzee.
that. Goes
Yeah.
down on his evolutionary scale there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then and that one that's them getting back to science a little bit because he's like, "How could I have leapt?" And it occurs to Sam. He goes, "Well, 99% same DNA, so I guess it's not that far."
Take that, intelligent design.
I know, although
Yeah.
to be fair, we wouldn't actually have evolved from chimps. We just have
Common
they'd
ancestor.
be a cousin, not a
common
not an
ancestor.
Yeah.
No, that's every dipshit who doesn't understand evolution. Like on Big Brother, not that long ago, somebody goes, "If evolution is true, well, then why are there still chimpanzees? Why aren't they gone?" And you're like, "Well, because common ancestry."
Yeah.
No, it's like, one way I heard somebody say once, it's like saying that, if America started out as a colony of England, why come they're still English?
Right, yeah.
But he goes to he turns into a chimpanzee to get this chimpanzee
Out of
ready.
medical experiments. He gets him out of medical
being into space.
Now, do you remember the moment that saved it? That was why they decided this monkey was good for space?
I haven't watched this episode in a while.
Neither have I. This is what a nut I was about the show. I remember all this stuff and I found this fairly touching and kind of cool. But chimpanzees cannot swim. Chimpanzees cannot swim because their body weight is wrong for swimming. That is, so they're not necessarily very good in water.
Fact or quantum
Fact.
leap? Okay.
Yeah, that's just the thing about.
They do their homework.
Yeah.
Because you remember, I don't think there was ever an underwater episode of Lancelot Link.
Yeah, chimps are not. In fact, not. In fact, we're odd in our penchant for going in the water, and some other primates do, like gibbons, I believe, and bonobos are fine with the water, but chimps are not because their body weight is wrong for it, and they might play in the water. They've been known to play in the water, but you kind of have to teach them to do it, and get them over a
You're
natural.
like our
fear.
own Jane Goodall. Yeah, wonderful.
I love chimp stuff. So there's a scene where something happens where one of the research scientists gets knocked out and falls in the water or something like that, and Sam goes in, and of course he's not actually a chimp. He's Sam. The chimp is in the imaging chamber.
Yeah.
Which those were funny scenes too because those were funny
means
scenes.
Real life Sam was actually had a chimpanzee in his body. So
more or less,
So he's like, in the alternate universe, he's like in his house, just like flinging shit at the wall.
Well, Dean Stockwell
and
could
ripping-
probably relate because
Yeah.
he'd been tight with a chimp too. If you count the whole Cornelius thing,
That's true. That's true.
Wow.
He'd been inside one as well.
Planted in the ape.
So he carries the research scientist out of the water, and everybody's like, he couldn't do that. He's supposed to be afraid of the water. And he goes, well, but they have emotions. They care. And that's the moment when they realize But by the way, chimps solidly care. I saw this great. You should watch the great apes on Nova. Chimps do something that people thought they didn't do for years, and it's just human bias. It's not science that kept us from discovering this. It's human bias. You know what they do?
What?
They make spears.
Really?
For the longest time, people said chimps are not tool makers. They make spears. What they do, they take a branch, they strip it away, they sharpen the tip, and they use it to kill things to eat.
Wow.
Now, so they've been trying to figure out all the different ways, like what is the difference? What is it that keeps them from becoming a dominant species? What is it? And they were trying to figure it out, and they did this amazing experiment. So here's the experiment. They have a box, and you tap the box on the top with a stick. You put a stick in the top. There's a hole. Tap it. You move these two rods, and you open up this little thing, and a piece of candy comes out.
Right.
And so they show the chimps what they're doing, and see if the chimps can do it. The chimps can do it. Then they show little kids. Little kids learn how to do it. So they're learning now. They do something crazy. They take the same experiment, but now the box is made of clear plexiglass, so you can see the inner workings.
Yeah.
So now it's not a secret what you're doing. So they poke the stick in the top, and it turns out there's a false bottom. When you poke the stick in the top, it's not doing anything. It has no effect.
Yeah.
You move the two rods, it has no effect. All you had to do the whole time was open the thing, and the piece of candy's there. The actions are meaningless.
Yeah.
So what they think is going to happen is, well, the chimps are going to just do the actions and get the candy. And the kids, of course, are going to just get the candy. It turns out to be the opposite.
Wow.
The kids do the actions to get the candy. The chimps look and go, candy. So the chimps are clearly smarter than the kids in that moment.
Yeah.
And yet this is the conclusion that researchers have come to. Chimps can learn. Chimps can create because they can invent a spear. What are they bad at? They're bad at teaching, and they're bad at sharing. And they're bad at cooperation.
Yeah.
Because the reason they don't do that is they can imitate. They can look at you and say, oh, I see what he's doing. I'm going to do that. But they can't sit and pass on knowledge. So a monkey invents a spear. 2 generations later, another monkey has to invent the spear again. They don't build upon past knowledge.
Yeah.
They have to reinvent the wheel is what they have to do. So there's always, because like one human being invents the spear, he's the smartest human being. The other human beings are dipshits, but they know how to make a spear because they teach each other.
Right.
Then another smart human being shows up and goes, I'm going to make a better spear.
Right.
Once the next smart chimpanzee comes along, he has nothing to build upon. And that part of the brain that allows for cooperation does exist in other animals. Can you guess which one? The dog.
Really?
If chimps had the cooperative spirit and the learning spirit, because they've done the same experiment with a dog, the dog will pass the test the way that a child will.
So you're telling me we just need to get chimps to start fucking dogs?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Or
well,
we need to,
That's
or,
against the Bible, I'll tell you that.
or we need to get a situation
Every
where we have to
kind
get
to its
chimps,
But it
and
also-
give them the spirit of Scott Bakula, and they would just fuck everything
Yeah, but you know
up.
what? Here, let me just
But it
say
also,
that.
by the way, demonstrates how evolution is blind. It's random. The dogs ended up with cooperation because it helped them get food from people. So it helped them become, but they didn't get the other part of the brain.
Dogs are dumb, man. Dogs are really dumb. Cats are much more better. But what am I saying? The one
Don't be a
issue,
speciesist.
The one issue. I remember that movie. Remember that Speciesist?
Yeah.
With that girl running around naked and things. That was
great.
sexy. That was sexy. But specious, yeah. But the one thing I did not like about this episode was having to watch Scott Bakula in the diaper the whole time.
Right. Oddly enough, that was my favorite part. But yeah, it's funny because if you think about it, the only reason I know this stuff is because I really just am fascinated by evolution because I'm curious as hell about our weird brains. Did you know that if you were able to take out the center of your brain, the part that sits on your brain stem, and get it out to where it was still alive, you couldn't do that. But let's say
This is better than Bill Nye right now. I
and
have
you
to
took
say.
that little part of your brain and you put it inside a lizard, it would work. It's a perfect lizard brain.
Do you know there was an old? This is going to be really obscure, but in one of those 19th century magazines like Scribner's, there was an old story called "The Monster of Lake Lemaitre," which was this thing where these two scientists are out west somewhere, and they discovered like a plesiosaur, like an elasmosaurus, and one of the scientists dies, and the other guy puts his brain basically in the elasmosaurus, and he starts to take on the characters. Anyway, at the end, the cavalry comes and kills it with a mountain howitzer. But I'm reminded of this. I am reminded of this.
This, by the way, is why creationism makes no sense, because creationism, sometimes they'll compare it to construction, like a building. But if you built buildings the way we evolved, what you would have is in the center of a skyscraper would be an outhouse. Do you know what I mean? Because that's how evolution works. Like, the junk doesn't go away.
Yeah.
It's still in there.
Yeah, they try to deny that though. They find some rhetorical excuse for every aspect.
But it is speciesism. The only thing that keeps people from seeing how evolution works is speciesism. Because dogs are not dumb; they're smart relative to their species.
But the dogs I have are. But
well,
that
yeah,
could
there
just
can be
yeah.
dumb dogs too. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure there are dogs
Pooch
where
it, if
other
you're
dogs
listening.
go, "Yeah, Spot's a fucking moron."
Wiggles is no mental giant. I recently actually came across a creationist textbook written by Dwayne Gish, and it's basically just like a Dwayne Gish lecture in the form of with the format of a textbook.
Jim Bruce, thank you so much for joining
Thank you,
us.
Jim.
Good to be here. Thank you for having
Got anything to plug? You mentioned you had a podcast.
I do. I have a podcast that's called Who's This Now? And you can find out more about that on Who Dis Now on Twitter or our Tumblr account, Who Dis Now.
And you have a special.
I do have a special coming up. I'm going to be filming it on October 6th at the West Side Comedy Theater.
All
which is
right.
a very cool theater. I don't know. Have you guys heard of this place, this West Side?
I've heard of it.
I've heard of it.
But I'm very excited. It's going to be cool. The name of the special is going to be Jim Bruce, I'm Dying as Fast as I Can. And it's very dark, but it's funny stuff. So I'm pretty excited that that's coming to pass finally. You can go to jimbrucecomedy.com.
I'll probably have it on the West Side Comedy Theater website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, until next time, I'm Rivers Langley.
I'm Pat.
I'm Mr. Gonna give us an old boy, brother.
Oh, boy.
The Goods from the Woods is mixed and edited by me, Rivers Langley, and distributed by Westcast Network. Our theme song is composed by DJ Smiles. You can find him online at djsmiles.net.